Joe, I mentioned last night on social media my guest list for this morning, and I mentioned that Ammon Bundy would be joining us. He is a candidate for governor in Idaho. He is an independent candidate challenging Governor Brad Little in this November's election. And I mentioned it on social media. I got a lot of reaction, most of it positive. Somebody though was critical, and somebody followed up with a point after the critic chimed in and said, there's the media version of Ammon Bundy, and then there's the real guy. And the real guy is a much nicer human being than mainstream media would portray. And I think he's made that clear the last several times he's visited with us on the air. 5 minutes after 9 o'clock, it is 75, and Bill Colley with you on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. And Mr. Bundy, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, Bill. Glad to be back.
Yeah, you were bitten by the Biden economy the last time we had this scheduled. That is because of all of the flight delays going on all over the country, as I understand it.
Yeah, I was flying out to Florida and I got stuck in actually Salt Lake, which isn't too far away, but certainly was an interesting layover. But anyway, glad to be with you now.
Yeah, you take along a sleeping bag because if you got to spend a couple of days in the terminal, you can be prepared that way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The flights it's just like a common thing now that they just either cancel a flight or they, postpone it for an hour or two. And I guess it's just kind of normal. Our economy and our, the things that we used to enjoy are and used to really rely on are starting to really change.
We've got a couple of big stories that are brewing nationally that, gosh, you might be the perfect spokesman to talk about these things. And number one, let's start with what happened at Mr. Trump's house in Florida on Monday, where just, out of the blue, an army of FBI agents show up and end up taking over the place for much of the day and pretty much ransacking it as well. What was your reaction?
Well, it's disheartening to see because it's another level, although this has become very common for the FBI and for, even like our state police and to do this. Our justice systems, if you will, have become quite common in doing this type of thing. But it is unique in the sense that it's never happened to a former president of the United States before. And that is very concerning because we're starting to see things that usually just see in like third world countries, this political warfare type action. Usually we see it and we read about it and it becomes somewhat common and expected in like third world countries, but not here in the United States.
I was going to say, we crossed a bridge, and what really shocks me is people at the White House claimed they had no idea it was going on. And that's the other part of this. I think they may be lying, but if they're not lying, the fact that the deep state is so confident to go about doing these things without clearing it with the White House, another big shocker. I mean, it's like Praetorian Guard.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Bill. And because if there's any accountability in these, bureaucracies, which the FBI is a bureaucracy, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Department of Justice is also a bureaucracy. Both are within the executive branch of government, which means their boss, they report to the President of the United States on a federal level. And that means that if the President of the United States or the White House did not know these actions were going to be taking place, that means these agencies are just running completely rogue. That they're like as you said, they're confident enough that they can just do this at this level and not even inform their boss or those who are supposed to be keeping them under control, as representatives of the people.
The saying I heard a lot on television the last couple of days was, if it can happen to President Trump, it can happen to anybody, but it's already happened to other people because you've been on the other side of that going back to 2014. When I heard that, I thought, well, let's say you get to January and you are sworn in, let's say in January as governor. How do you, as the chief executive of a state like Idaho, how do you prevent that from happening to citizens here?
So we have the level of the FBI coming into the state, and there's some really good protections that have been forgot about, and one that's stronger than any other is that the FBI or any federal or state agency that is going to try to enforce law, if you will, inside the county is supposed to get authorization from the county sheriff first. This is in U.S. code. And so they are not to just go into a county and raid some people or raid a business or do anything in that county without consent from the sheriff. And that means that the sheriff can say no and actually can stand against that. And it's very important that as a governor and as the sheriffs in this state, that we begin to enforce that. We make it very vocal that if the FBI is going to do anything in the state, that they need to get consent from the county sheriff, that there are certain processes and things that they need to do through the state, and that they just can't come in rogue and just do what they want to do inside inside of Idaho and inside our counties.
It is a small world because I used to live in a county on the East Coast where the sheriff well, he was my sheriff for about 4 years, uh, Jeff Christopher, told me last night. He said that he knew you on a personal level, and Jeff has been one of those members of that Constitutional Sheriff's Association for,
Mm-hmm.
gosh, probably 15 years now. And these are the people who would say that is true, that they have to be notified first before anything like this happens.
Yeah, and that the Constitutional Sheriff's Association has done a lot of good work to educate sheriffs and policing agencies across the country on this very matter. But it also is a enforceable thing inside our own federal codes, and it is something that I apologize, Bill. Someone tried to call me. Something that is a great protection to us. Like if we just follow this, it's not like all of a sudden we're not going to lose the rule of law on a federal level. That's not what we're saying here. It's just the proper check and balance, and it's how the people keep in control of rogue law enforcement agencies from coming down on them, because they get to say who the sheriff is. They give the sheriff the policing and arresting power. And if all policing and arresting power has to go through him in that county, then it keeps the people in charge. It makes so that this great, almost sacred power of the force of law isn't abused.
Got a note that came in from a writer in Kimberly who says, I've always believed whomever the media goes after extremely hard, like they have President Trump, then they are most likely very good. He said, I'm going to vote for Mr. Bundy solely on the fact that Brad Little protected his donors during COVID instead of Idahoans. Said, I can't vote for the same guy and expect different results. Do you think that if they were coming into an FBI team or IRS team or anything like this, and they're armed to the teeth now, everyone with ammo in their own police forces, coming into Idaho, do you think that the current occupant of the governor's office would step up and say no?
No, he's already proved that. Not only that, Bill, is he has sold us out. And I'm not just saying that to try to, as a hyperbole or to excite people. He has taken billions of dollars of federal funds, and he has agreed through written agreements, memorandums of understanding, actual enforceable contracts. He has agreed to allow the federal government to enforce their policies, their laws, their mandates, and pretty much anything else they want in the state. Not only that, is through these agreements, he has actually agreed to help them enforce it. So that we're not going to get the protection, the check and balance from the governor being Governor Little. He's just not going to do that. It's going to take someone that's going to get in there, that's going to have to nullify these memorandums of understanding. It's going to be a little bit of a legal battle. And someone that just say, look, you're not going to do this in the state of Idaho. You're not going to do this to the people of Idaho.
Got another note from a writer in Twin Falls, and I think he's actually trying to paraphrase Brad a little. Gas prices have gone down a few cents. Food has become a luxury. Boys and girls are interchangeable, and I'm making money. Everything in Idaho is great. Why do you want my job?
That's good. There's something interesting kind of that what remind me of that. In his March 8, 2022, so this year in March, he made a press release. He has a press, and in that press release, he said he didn't violate anybody's rights. He didn't lock down Idaho. He says all these things that are pretty much like, it's really amazing he's saying it. But in that, he says if we didn't do, like if I didn't put the state in emergency status, then we wouldn't have got all these FEMA funds. And he says now that gas prices are high and inflation is out of control, aren't we grateful we got all these funds from the federal government? And I just thought, man, this person has no idea about the way economies work, because it was because of all these COVID funds that were being dished out, trillions of dollars to the state governors and to all these bureaucracies and so forth, that caused the inflation. And here he is saying, aren't you glad that I went and got all this money because of the inflation, and now it doesn't hurt us so bad? And it just this our governor just doesn't understand the realities of life.
You bring that up. I was just reading this morning. I think it was Idaho Capital Sun, which when they launched, they said they were going to be objective. I will say that they're left leaning, but there was a story there, and it said that some smaller communities in the state have decided to reject this government money, and realizing that it's not necessarily anything they need, and the rules are strings attached. They don't want any part of that. And I would like to think that in the future, if we ever got into a situation, let's hope we don't, but that more governments would take that into account. And if they always say, well, if you send the money back, someone else will get it. Still, I don't know how true that is.
Well, someone else will get it. They'll also get all of the strings that are attached to it, all of the requirements that are attached to it. So, there is a cost. Nothing is free, and these federal funds come with heavy mandates. A county, for example, if a county takes certain funds, they may be required to sign a memorandum of understanding that is pushing the building code policies of the UN inside their little counties. And I'm not exaggerating. That is not something that I'm just saying to, as a conspiracy. That is what happened. County takes money, and in return, the federal government makes them sign their building code policies, which is mostly coming from the UN. That's a well-known thing. And so you end up with UN or world-sanctioned building codes inside your little county because the county decided to take $1.5 million of federal funds. You have to balance. Is it worth it?
Yeah, that's a question sometimes that I think doesn't get answered for 10 years, and then down the road, somebody in local government says, oops. Then they realize what it cost them.
Yeah, and the people that did it aren't even in office anymore. They might be completely gone, and you have these other individuals that are more conservative, and they're now having to decide: are we going to not follow these policies that we agreed to and receive money for, and risk being pulled into federal courts because we're not going to comply, or do we just keep doing what we've been doing?
We got to get to a break. We got about 30 seconds. Before we do that, if people would like to take a look at your website, what's the address?
VoteBundy.com. Very simple, VoteBundy.com.
We have more on the way with Ammon Bundy this morning. It is almost 20 minutes after 9 o'clock and 75 on our way likely into the low 90s before the day is over with, and maybe some morning rain today. That will clear out, though, likely early this afternoon, and then we have a long, steady stretch of dry weather ahead. In fact, weather forecast over the course of about the next 7 days, according to the long range, is daytime highs in the low 90s with a few clouds here and there. Definitely the dog days of summer. Bill Cawley with you, too, on Magic Valley this morning. on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Ammon Bundy joining us this morning. He's a candidate for governor in Idaho. He is the independent candidate challenging the incumbent Republican Brad Little. It's 9:24, and we're at 74 on Magic Valley this morning with Bill Colley on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. But we were just having a conversation off air, and he pointed out the experience that President Trump is going through. He said, well, on the national stage, mirrors somewhat of what the Bundy family has gone through over the last decade. And that includes sometimes time behind bars, but almost perpetually being in court, just as if the government is trying to put you out of business and grind you down to the point where you finally say enough. And yet you keep going. I was going to point out that this is what happens, though, with people who speak out. We tend to believe that this is still the land of liberty, but the deep state has a great series of force, and they can bring it from a lot of different directions, right?
Yeah, and they do, and they've weaponized the judicial process, due process, the courts, the policing agencies. They've weaponized them and to try to punish their political opponents. And again, this isn't anything new when it comes to history, but it's something that I want to believe is new in this country. And President Trump has been going through this. My family has gone through it over the last decade. I have been nonstop prosecuted by the state for the last 2 years, and especially since I announced my run as governor. And it's been just nonstop. And I have it's just nonstop. And then the very people, St. Luke's Hospital, who was the number one recipient of the COVID money when it comes to private entities coming from the governor's office, now they filed suit against me as well. And so it's nonstop. But I'm not going to yield to this, and I know the game they're playing. And I don't believe President Trump's going to yield to it either. He understands the game they're playing. It's political warfare.
It does take, though, some, I guess, a special reserve of courage to deal with it, because a lot of people would have just said, "All right, I've had enough," and they would have dropped out of public view.
Yeah, I don't know, how else to fight it. I can't give up, and also saw that in the end, like when we were put in prison, federal prison for 2 years, never convicted of a crime, had to suffer through that. Never once saw our families. We were held in there, and half that time was in solitary confinement, as I said, but we didn't give up. We had plenty of reasons to give up. They were the minimum sentencing on our charges was 106 years, and we hadn't done anything wrong. Like, we had not hurt anybody, threatened anybody, nothing. And so we just held on and, didn't lose faith. It wasn't easy. It was very hard to do. There was a lot of tears, a lot of, suffering that went on. But we held on to the end because we knew we were right. And then in the end, we had a win. We contributed that to God, giving us that win. But we didn't give up. And so, I still think that that's the way it's going to be. I think if we don't give up, if we stay strong, if we endure it, then in the end, something good is going to happen. And I hope President Trump knows that. I think he does. And that's part of the reason why we just keep going.
I was going to, we got a couple of minutes before the next break, but when it comes to St. Luke's, all you did was essentially stand outside a hospital and ask a few questions. It's not like you kicked the doors down or tipped over a couple of nursing stands.
No. But it really, us exposing what they did and how they just immediately became like an extension arm of the state in taking that baby, and us exposing that and exposing what the doctor did and all of that really hurt them. They're claiming that we hurt them, significantly financially, and I don't know how that's even possible, because they get hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars in, state funding and hundreds of millions of dollars in donations. And so I don't know how little old me and Diego Rodriguez, hurt them, but that's what they're claiming. But I think that's really kind of beside the point. This is St. Luke's is the number one recipient of Governor Little's COVID distribution of funds. And we have been very vocal about Governor Little and what he's doing with these funds. And this is another way to basically use the courts to try to force us to stop saying these things and to put us in duress so that we just give up. And that's political warfare. Isolate, demonize, and destroy. And it's been going on for thousands of years, and this is just a good example of it.
We have more on the way with Ammon Bundy. He is a candidate for governor in Idaho, running as an independent. It's 9:30. We've got one more half hour of the program left. Bill Colley as well on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're at 75. Ammon Bundy, candidate for governor in Idaho. He's running as an independent, and he is with us until 10 o'clock this morning. We're at 9:33. It is 75. Bill Colley with you, too, on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. He was sharing with us earlier St. Luke's, which is a big outfit, and they claim that he has somehow damaged them because of his complaints about some of their practices in the past. And we should also note that the big healthcare providers throughout the state of Idaho also give generously to a lot of different political campaigns, including a lot of people in leadership in our government. I just got a note that came in from a writer in Kimberly who said, why do they need to sue? He said, I thought they claimed to be nonprofit. He said, I didn't trust them before or after they had difficulties with Mr. Bundy. I think the writer brings up a good point. St. Luke's is not in any serious need of cash unless they want to turn around and give it to some other bought and paid for politician.
Yeah, and it's not about that. I think it's we have some inside information that I need to verify, but it's this is a political thing, and I'm not going to try to say those things over the air. But till they've been further established, but. It started out as a political thing. The entire situation when it came to baby Cyrus was a political thing. To be honest with you, they took the wrong baby, but they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done what they did, and they did. And they were certainly part of that. And so, the consequences of that is they don't want to take. We made it very public what was happening and what they were doing, and we actually explained what was happening in that situation. And if they're financially hurt because of that, then that's the consequences of that. But the point that I want to keep emphasizing is that they're allowed to use the court to put someone like me in this duress, even though they're not doing a very good job at it. But in normal circumstances, I've spent a ton of time in the courts. I've had to fight my way out of federal prison in two major cases while I was incarcerated. So I kind of know my way around the courts. I've been pretty involved in that, never by choice, but if they were to do this to just say like a state candidate or a Senate candidate or a House representative that's running for office, do the same thing to it might be so stressful to them, they just throw up their hands and stop running and stop fighting. And that's what they hope they're going to accomplish in this case. And at least that's what I believe they're hoping they're trying to accomplish. And we should not be allowed to use the courts for that purpose.
Do you think, obviously you're in this to win. So let's say this time next year you're sitting as governor. Do you think it will continue? I mean, you mentioned how they keep going after Donald Trump. He served as president. Do you think that as governor that they would keep coming after you?
Yes, I think they absolutely will. However, President Trump, he entered the scene 2016, and yeah, he had a ton of business experience. A very successful person, but he hadn't had a lot of experience dealing with the deep state. Now, the second time, if he does run and he gets in, it's going to be a completely different game. He's much more aware of how wicked it is, how much power they have, and who's his enemy. Now, I will have to say, my family's been fighting this fight for now very intensely, almost a decade. And my family's been fighting this battle for multiple generations, actually. And what I'm saying by that is I'm not going into this naive of who these people are, what they want, what's their motive, and what are the tools and mechanisms they use to try to destroy you. So, I'm very aware of what is going to happen, and I understand what I need to do to accomplish the things that Idaho needs to remain conservative, to remain Idaho, and combat these people who are going to try to destroy me before I can get that done.
I got a caller who's was trying to reach us, and I'll just point out, caller, we got to get to a break in about 50 seconds. So if you want to give us a call after the break, we can talk to the candidate, or you can talk to the candidate at that point. But before we get to the break again, what's the web address for people who'd like to know more?
VoteBundy.com. VoteBundy.com.
And if someone wanted to make a contribution, they can do it there too.
They can do it there. There's a lot of information, videos. There's actually probably more information than someone can process in just a few days. But it's there, and it's organized, and you can understand who I am and also contribute and help.
We have more with Ammon Bundy on the way. And again, he's an independent candidate for governor in Idaho. It's 9:40. I wanted to mention Cal Thomas and his morning commentary up in the next break as well. We're at 76. Bill Cully on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I think what's interesting about the politics of Idaho, the person who has the best chance to unseat Governor Brad Little, I would say, is not the Democrat. I'd be hard-pressed to even come up with the name of that candidate. Ammon Bundy, though, has a lot of name recognition, and he might agree that it's some of it good, some of it bad, but at least he's a well-known name, and his politics are a lot more similar, I think, to a lot of Idahoans than, let's say, a liberal Democrat would be. And he's joining us for a few more minutes this morning on Magic Valley this morning with Bill Cully on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're up to 77. We were just talking during the break, and you were pointing out that you actually have a platform put together where you've got some ideas on how you'd like to make Idaho a better place.
Yeah, if people want to go check that out, again, go to votebundy.com and click on my Keep Idaho plan. It is an extensive plan that I've laid out, spent years and years working on, and proposing to the people of Idaho that this is what we implement. I think actually, and I've been told by many, many people that this plan is what needs to be implemented in the United States as well, to bring us back to our conservative roots and back to peace and back to prosperity. And so, yeah, I'm not just here complaining. I'm not just here, defending against problems. Certainly proposing some very specific things that we do here in Idaho that's going to make things much better and set Idaho up as one of the economic powerhouses in the world. I believe that we have that opportunity here in Idaho.
We certainly, we have all sorts of resources that we hardly even tap. I mean, we do well when it comes to hydropower. We could likely do more. We have minerals underground that we don't pull out. We still have timber resources. There's all sorts of things that I would imagine we could manage those. I don't think anybody here is going to go out and despoil the earth, but these things are available. And if we would just, in many ways, you just have to turn a blind eye to the federal government and go ahead and do them.
Yeah, it's exactly one of my points in the Keep Idaho, Idaho plan is to take back Idaho's land from the federal government. It's essential that we do that. I could break that down. I have broke that down before, but it's essential that we do that for many reasons. But one, just right off the top, is we can't be prosperous. We cannot even pay our own bills, and we can't be independent from the control and regulations coming from Washington, D.C. if they're controlling over 61% of our land and over 72% of our subsurface mineral rights. And it's unconstitutional, and it puts Idaho in extreme disadvantage when it comes to other states, especially the eastern states.
I got a question for you that just kind of popped into my mind, and Idaho's my adopted home state, and I was asked a question by the mayor of Twin Falls a few weeks ago. She said, "Would you live here if it wasn't for the job?" And I said, "Sure." Uh, in fact, I'd like to live here. I'd like to live in Hagerman. I'd like to live in Wallace. I'd like to live in Triggs. Just about every place in the state that I go through, I drive through, or I visit. I really love it, and I can't really put my finger on it. But what attracts you to Idaho? What do you find that you really enjoy about living here?
Yeah, so I didn't move here for a job. That's the number one reason why people move or migrate is because of economics for a job. I didn't. I had a couple businesses that I was able to run remotely, and I had a choice of where I wanted to live. I could have gone anywhere in the United States, actually anywhere probably in North American continent, and I chose to come to Idaho. Uh, I chose for many reasons, but more than any is I believe that the people here will stand together. I saw what I experienced in 2014 with my family. I saw that basically our lives were preserved because people come together peacefully and just said and stuck together and said, "You're not going to do this to this family." And I believe that, and still believe that the people in Idaho are more prone to look out for each other, to stand for each other, to understand each other. And then on top of that, it's a beautiful state, and I love agriculture. I love the self-sustaining ability that we have in Idaho. And I mean, I really enjoy. I do not have any desire to move. I think it was one of the best moves that I have made, especially when it comes to my family and the community that we went into. And so that's why I moved to Idaho, and that's why I want to stay here. We just need to get these things figured out and fixed, if you will, so that we can preserve that for many, many decades and even generations if we do it right.
I think that every part of the country has something they can work on, and I think that we've kind of discussed that for a good part of this hour. But I think if you look around, maybe Idaho, Wyoming, probably even Montana is now trending a little bit more this direction. But if you're looking for liberty, this corner of the country probably is still that last place where you realize it's the most easily attained if you have just a few course corrections. I don't know that you can do this in New England, for instance, or New Jersey or New York, but I think you can still do it here, and people can still live that promise that our founding fathers had in mind.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We have that opportunity. However, it is because of that, because of who we are, and because of the consolidation of basically of conservatives, if you will, the liberals have a target on us, and we see how they just have turned Colorado. They turned, and it was a very deliberate a plan of going into Colorado and turning it from a conservative to a liberal-controlled state. They did this with Oregon, Washington, California, Nevada, New Mexico. I mean, growing up in Nevada, 20 plus years ago, if you would have told me that it was going to be a liberally controlled Democrat state, I would have said, no way. And now it is. And so it's not like we can just stay dormant and just keep living our lives and expect for Idaho to remain what we love about Idaho. It will not be that way. This is an attack, and Idaho is in a battle for its conservative soul. And we have to understand that there's a war, that there's a battle going on, and that we must actively participate in it, because we certainly can win it. We can preserve it here in Idaho. I believe absolutely that we can, but we can't do it without action. We can't do it without being strategic and actually moving and acting towards the defense of our liberties, the defense of the beautiful land that we have, the beautiful resources that we have. We can't just stand by idly and expect it to be there forever.
We have a caller looking to join the conversation. And caller, we've got a few more minutes to go. You're up next. You're on the air. Good morning, caller. I can hear something in the background, but I can hear just a little bit of noise, but I can't detect a voice. I'll mention this then, because this is a subject I think that was pretty sore for me a few years ago. We have this group called Reclaim Idaho, and they are doing this incrementally. They're going along and they're moving that ball leftward, similar to what happened in Colorado. Every time they have a ballot measure, it moves us more and more into the high-tax bureaucratic state. And I think we have to be aware of that. And yet good people voted for the last measure they had a few years ago. We have to do a better job of getting the message out about how you protect what we have.
Yeah, that's a perfect example, Bill. Another one is Idaho, through our current leadership, has increased the food stamps programs more than any other state in the United States, 24.2%, the highest of all 50 states. And we've also, under our governorship, under the little governorship, we've dumped over $50 million just recently of the COVID funds into government housing, free housing. And we are seeing these programs. The Department of Health and Welfare takes up almost 40% of the Idaho's budget. That's a huge amount. And what we're doing is we are, making the government is making the people dependent, but they're also attracting people. 36% of the people that move to Idaho are liberal-minded, and they want to change Idaho into a more woke, progressive place to live. And so, there's things that we just need to do. Let's just end these programs. Let's make it so that conservatives live here and not those who can live off the state. They're just very simple things that need to be done to preserve Idaho. It's not a complicated thing. But for some reason, our current leadership is actually pushing this liberal agenda rather than the conservative agenda.
I'll tell you, in the last 30 seconds there, you were echoing your dad.
Well, I could echo worse, that's for sure.
Hey, God let you run, but again, what's the website for people who'd like to know more?
VoteBundy.com, VoteBundy.com. And thank you for your time, Bill. I really appreciate it.
We'll talk again in a few weeks.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Take care, sir. Ammon Bundy joining us this morning, independent candidate for governor in Idaho. I got to get to a break, a long one, a 20-hour break for me. Dan Bongino, of course, is coming up following the news at 10 o'clock. It is currently 78. A quick note about programming tomorrow morning. We're going to devote an hour tomorrow morning to the situation at Centennial Park in Pillar Falls and the recreation on the Snake River. That with the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Office, that between 8 and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. We also have tomorrow morning Pastors Roundtable. That's between 9 and 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Friday, we've got the Gun Guys. That'll be, of course, Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. They'll talk all things firearms between 8 and 9 o'clock. They're also available for your comments and questions. God willing, the creek don't rise. I'm back here tomorrow morning between 6 and 10 a.m. It's 75 on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.